Hey, this is John with Proactive Exterior Cleaning here in Greenville, South Carolina. Today we're out in an office complex where we're focusing on the curb and the gutter and the sidewalk. They're getting ready to resurface or to actually seal coat the parking lot, so we're getting everything cleaned up in advance. We've got some bad clay or rust stains on the curb and gutter. They're all dirty, so we've got to get everything cleaned up for them, and we'll show you the chemicals. But I thought I'd take this opportunity to talk about what it costs or what you should be charging when you look at an office complex and everything that goes into that. So we're going to do a little bit of cleaning and get everything cleaned up, do some chemical applications, and then I'll get into what the cost of that is for your business so you can make a better decision on what you should be charging. To clean the curb and gutters, you're going to have certain equipment, and it's kind of up to you depending on how dirty the curb is, whether the curb is muddy, whether there's a lot of grass in it, whether you have overhang or different materials in your way. But all of this is basically coming to the determination of how much curb and gutter you can clean per hour. We have multiple tips, straight tips, rotary tips we use, all depending on the application. The other factor in a commercial application is it's very time consuming to rinse the curb and gutter and to also rinse the parking lot. You cannot leave a commercial setting dirty, and that's very time consuming, and time is money, so you have to take that into account when you're accounting your time in the quote. Now that you know what we're talking about when we talk about curb and gutter and what all it takes to clean the curb and gutter and to rinse the parking lot, let's take a bold move and talk about what you ought to be charging. Or more specifically, not what you ought to be charging, but what it's going to cost you to do that curb and gutter. So let's start breaking some of this down. We get a man on a job. We can basically do about 3.5 lineal feet per minute, or roughly that breaks down to about 210 feet of curb and gutter, as you've seen in these videos, in about an hour. So let's look at a sample job of 500 feet. This really doesn't work when we're talking about 20 feet of curb and gutter, or you've got a sidewalk area and just a little bit of curb and gutter on the end. But when you literally have, this last job you've seen in this video was about 1,500 feet of curb and gutter. So when you've got that much curb and gutter, let's take a sample look at that job. So if you've got 500 feet to quote of curb and gutter, and you can do approximately 3.5 lineal feet per minute, that roughly is going to be 2.3 to 2.4, let's call it 2 hours and 20 minutes to 2 hours and 30 minutes to actually do that. Now, let's be realistic. We're not talking about standing there and just tracking how long it takes you to do 10 feet and multiplying that out. This does take rinsing, going back and getting everything, the parking lot, but when it's all said and done to do that 500 feet, you've got about 2.5 hours on the wand that you've actually spent doing that. Now, if you're doing this out of the trunk of your car and you've got a Home Depot machine, it obviously isn't going to cost you what it's costing us. But the other side of that is, don't change the market by doing that. In other words, professional businesses expect a professional that's going to be there and back up their product. As a professional in the industry, not only we have equipment to maintain, and when a hose breaks, we've got to pay for that and have spares on site. We have a shop, therefore we have rent, we have insurance to cover that shop, we have liability insurance. It goes on and on and on of the costs that are associated with running a business. We have employees and we have to pay those employees, and we have to pay for the accounting for those employees. So when you do that, we don't put a man on this type of job at about $80 an hour. That's not a making money. That's a breaking even point at about $80 an hour to cover all the fixed and variable costs that we're going to have along the way. So if you use that math on this 500-foot job, it took us 2.5 hours, 2.5 hours to actually do the work. And so that roughly breaks down to roughly $240 to $260. It also takes 15 or 20 minutes to set the equipment up. It takes 15 or 20 minutes to break the equipment down and clean everything up. And so you have to factor all that in. We also haven't factored drive time in, depends on where you're driving, etc. But when you break down that 500 lineal feet of curb and gutter our cost is going to roughly be about 50 cents a lineal foot. Can't make money if I'm charging less than that. Anything less than that and money's coming out of my pocket. Most of the curb and gutter here in the upstate is stained. It's stained with rust coming out of the irrigation systems or clay coming directly out of the soil. Either way, we have to treat that with chemicals. So depending on the chemicals we use, we have a video where we outline and show you specific samples of all the chemicals. Please check that out. But those chemicals are going to cost anywhere from about $8 a gallon to literally about $30 a gallon, depending on the concentrations rate you may have to use in that area. But as a general rule, we would say that just talking about chemicals alone, it's going to cost about $10 per gallon. We also know that our spray rate is roughly 125 lineal foot per gallon. So in the example we're using of 500 feet, it's going to take filling a 4-gallon backpack sprayer with 4 gallons of chemicals mixed, roughly $10 a gallon. So roughly our chemical cost is going to be $40. Could be as high as $80 to $100 depending on the area we're in, but let's just use that as a round number. So $10 a gallon and 4 gallons, $40 on 500 lineal feet breaks down to about 8 cents per lineal foot of chemical use. We also have to spread that chemical, and that takes labor cost. So our guys can typically put down about 11.5, somewhere between 11 and 12 lineal feet per minute. That breaks down to 690 to 700 lineal feet in an hour of spraying. So in the case of the 500 lineal feet where we fill one backpack sprayer, it's going to take approximately 45 minutes to spray that chemical. We also account for about 15 minutes to mix the chemical and clean up after the chemical. So the 500 feet would roughly be an hour at about $80 an hour to make sure we're breaking even on the job. And when you break that down, that comes to 16 cents per lineal feet. So per lineal foot. So when you look at the chemical application and you put the chemical together with the labor, to break even just on that, we're looking at 25 cents a lineal foot. So I don't want to tell you exactly what you should be charging. All that really depends on your situation and your scenario. How far do you have to drive? Do you have a good customer? Is this customer going to lead to different work, more work? But the reality is, if you're not charging 75 cents per lineal foot, per lineal feet of curb and gutter to pressure wash, chemically treat, and rinse that curb and gutter, you will be losing money. So once again, I'm not trying to tell you what to charge in the market, but I am making a bold move in sharing what our costs are in the market. Any true professional is going to have these costs or similar costs. And as I mentioned earlier, the reality is our chemical costs are usually more than $10 per gallon. So that's 75 cents for power washing and chemical application is truly a minimum cost for you to break even. What I don't want you to do if you're trying to grow in the market or you're new to the market is to come in and charge half of what a professional would charge in the market. Not that you're trying to undercut the market, but because you don't know what the true costs are. But what happens is that you damage the market by resetting the market. You do a job for a building owner or a property manager. A year later, you're gone, you're out of business, and we are having to explain by the property manager why we're trying to charge double or triple for that work. If you want to be a true professional and grow your business, and you want to continue to stay in business by making a profit, take in consideration what the actual minimum costs are you need to be charging, and then add your profit margin to that. Should that profit margin be 20% or 30%? I'll leave that up to you, but I'm just wanting you to understand, especially if you're new in the market, what the minimum costs are to perform this work. So once again, this is John with Proactive here in the upstate of South Carolina. Subscribe to our channel. We'll continue to provide some more videos on a weekly basis. Comment below or give us a call if you've got anything specific you want to talk about. Thanks a lot.